Tragedy striking again at the ports of Auckland.
Another death at Auckland's port has prompted a call for a wider inquiry into safety issues in the industry.
We're only a small industry and we've seen a lot of workers die over the last couple of years.
I was absolutely devastated to hear that yet another death has happened at the ports this morning.
The headlines hit hard. Wharfies killed on the job after productivity was prioritised over safety at the Port of Auckland. And the details of those deaths, just devastating.
Authorities confirming the worker fell from a height. Amo Kalatu was crushed by a container in 2020. In 2017, swimmer Leslie Gelberg was fatally struck by a Ports of Auckland pilot boat. A year later, crane operator Laboom Dyer was killed after his crane tipped over.
From there, the bad press kept coming.
The former chief executive of the Port of Auckland has been found guilty of health and safety breaches.
A whopping $65 million has gone down the drain as the troubled Auckland port ditches its container automation project.
And for Auckland's port, it came at a time when management was under tremendous pressure over a failing automation project and worker safety concerns.
But that was then. This is now.
Solid report from Port of Auckland. We've got record container volume, stronger than expected early cruise season, which has led to an underlying net profit after tax of $42 million with a dividend to the local council of $25 million.
The government is celebrating the first project to get consent under the Coalition's fast-track regime. The Ports of Auckland expansion starts construction next month. It includes a new reinforced concrete piled wharf at the Bledisloe terminal, an extension of the Ferguson North berth, a cruise passenger terminal and other upgrades.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and today on The Detail, the Port of Auckland, from turmoil to turnaround to the new tripartite agreement with its biggest critics. How did the troubled council-owned company, a magnet it seems for debt and devastation, turn things around?
We went back to basics and started to just deliver what our customers, our community and what our workforce needed to be a great port.
That's Port CEO Roger Gray. Today I also talked to Carl Findlay from Maritime Union New Zealand, or MUNZ, a once fierce critic of the port. But the relationship now?
Very good. Excellent, in fact. We're working really well together and may long continue.
It would be fair to say this wasn't always the case?
It's fair to say. A terrible price has been paid, of course, but it's been a great learning curve for a lot of us older guys coming through that period to where we are now. And it's very, very clear, having worked the two models, if you like, which one we would prefer.
And that's the model headed by Roger. He took over as CEO of the port in April 2022, straight after those tumultuous few years.
Look, I'd been sitting in Littleton and Christchurch for 2 years running the port there. I'd been watching the unfolding of the automation project and also the relationships with both the customers, the mayor, and also with the workforce. And I didn't feel that that was the way I wanted to work. So when the opportunity came up to come back to Auckland, because I had lived here before, to lead the Port of Auckland, I took it with both hands. And really what I found was a place that was very, very fixated on delivering the automation project, almost at the detriment of everything else. And secondly, it would be fair to say the level of trust between the workforce and management was pretty strained. So, yeah, it was quite a lot to do. And then the customers and the mayor at the time, Phil Goff, were very clear in their feedback to me about how things were.
How do you turn something like that around? You've got disputes, you had deaths which were devastating, you had debt. Where and how do you start that turnaround?
Well, I think you identify a few basic things to get going. You do need to make some hard calls. And, I commend the board for making that decision to cancel automation. I felt we could never get on top of the operation, on top of the safety, while we were continuing to try and make automation work. And, we did a very detailed review of it, and we made the decision the best for the port's future would be to stop it. That led to, obviously, a $65 million write-off in software. It wasn't great.
Easy decision.
No, it wasn't. But without doing that, we weren't going to be able to do it. And then we said, well, we've got to go back to basics. we've got to run just a good port. We've just got to move cargo. Ports are not a particularly complex business. Ship turns up, you exchange cargo safely, and then the ship leaves. We couldn't do that if the workforce still were against us. So probably the most important thing was to sit down with the unions and say, we want to work together. A long era of mistrust. The waterfront can be a pretty militant place through history. So this approach was quite new to them. Interestingly, I had done it at Littleton, and so MUNS and the other unions were aware of this approach, and off the back of that, they said, all right, we'll give it a crack. And I think it's taken probably 2 to 3 years for them not to think it's a trick or it's a con, that it's genuine about how we want to work. And once we got that, then the product cargo started to flow. We sat down with the customers, understood what they wanted. We start to see improved profitability. That makes the council happier. That makes Mayor Brown happier. And
which is a good place to be.
It is. And the Mayor quite rightly says, he did challenge us to return better in the long-term plan last year, and we're certainly rising to that challenge. So it's really about going back to basics, and that's what we did.
I want to talk in a moment about the fact that you and Mayor Brown and Carl signed the tripartite agreement. But first, I just want to talk about the safety failures, because they cost lives. We had 4 in quick succession.
Yes.
How are you ensuring every worker goes home safely at the end of the day?
So what I'd say is safety is never finished. It's a dangerous workplace. You are moving heavy cargo in terrible conditions sometimes, in the rain, at night. The way we've done it is we've sat down with the workers and said, how can we work safer? What are the improvements we can make? We've done a lot of work on critical risks. We've identified them. We work out how to mitigate those risks. You can often never eliminate them, but you certainly can put controls in. And I think the real change came when we sat down with MUNS and wrote a code of practice. That was a real signal to other ports had chosen to push back on MUNS over this, and we said, no, we'll do it. So we sat down with MUNS and we wrote a code of practice for the Port of Auckland. And that was a really big sign that we were prepared to listen to the union and work genuinely together on safety. And they've been great. And then that code of practice became the straw person that we did with Maritime New Zealand and all the other ports then to have the enforceable code of practice put in across the country, which is a great step forward. So I feel very proud of the fact that with MUNS and our other unions and the Port of Auckland, which was a safety laggard, let's not deny that, we've been at the forefront of driving, along with Maritime New Zealand, an improvement across the sector.
Fantastic, and long may that continue. I want to talk financials very quickly. When you took over, what was the debt? And then I want you to compare it to your last financial result.
Yeah, it was sitting at about 350 million, maybe actually might have been 400, and we've been progressively paying that down. We've been paying down about $50 million a year. We chose this year to take the proceeds of a sale of our Master Maritime Holding shareholding. We could have paid down debt with that, but at the request of the governing body, we paid a special dividend of another 45 million on top of our operating dividend this year of 52 million. So this year we paid to the council 97 million. So we're very focused on continuing to pay down our debt. Now we're about to increase our debt. And why is that? Well, we're going into an investment program. We're about to invest over 200 million in the next 2 or 3 years on getting big ship capable, both for cruise but for cargo as well.
You have promised $1 billion to the council in the next decade.
Yes.
Will you make this, or is this a bit of pie in the sky?
No, we'll make it. We made our budget this year, of the year that's just finished for us, 30 June, was 65 million and we delivered 85.4. This year our budget's 95. That's in line with the projections to get to the billion. And what happens is we keep increasing the profitability till we hit about 105 million, and then we hold that for the 10-year period of the thing. And we're going to deliver it. We don't miss our numbers.
I love the confidence of this, Roger.
Well, I think I was asked by Lisa Owen whether I put my job on the line, whether we delivered or not, and I said yes.
The boss of Auckland Port is betting his job on making $1 million a week for the city within 3 years.
I remember this interview, actually. You stick to that today?
Yep, absolutely. We will deliver it, and because we have to. And the reason we have to is the city deserves a fair return. They have $1 billion of equity tied up there, and the ratepayers deserve to have a fair return on that. And that fair return is when you get into that 110 million a year. So that's what we're very focused on.
When I became the Mayor, I immediately put pressure on all council-controlled organisations and raised our expectations of Port of Auckland's profit levels. To their credit, the Board and the CEO raised the Port's performance and returns and met our demands head on.
How would you describe your relationship with Mayor Wayne Brown now?
Oh, it's pretty good. You're never in doubt with the Mayor in regards to his views on matters. And those who know me know that I can also be relatively blunt in my feedback. And so the Mayor and I have an open and honest conversation regularly on a number of matters. But, you know, he has and does acknowledge the commercial, the safety and the operational turnaround. You know, he in the end is a very successful businessman and he likes successful businesses, and he now sees the port as being a successful business.
It is. Auckland, though, is growing fast. Obviously, space on the waterfront is shrinking. Ultimately, long term, does the port have a future here, or do you think it should be moved?
For the next 40 plus years, it's in the right spot. There's no doubt in my mind. The proximity to the market is critical. And the reason we're seeing our volume grow, the reason we're seeing cars grow, the reason containers are growing is because when a car or a container arrives here, it's delivered within 2 days. If it goes somewhere else, it can be weak. The other thing is the port is the lowest carbon entry point. You know, if you were to move all the cars up to Northport as an example, as was proposed by some people, that would see us double our carbon footprint. And if we're serious, because all of them would be driven back to Auckland where they would be used. And if we're serious about decarbonisation and focusing on climate change, then for me the port's in the right spot. In 40 or 50 years, I do think the port will need to move. But I also think at that stage, so will the Port of Tauranga. And that's when I think New Zealand as a country will have to have a really serious discussion about a super port to service the whole of the Golden Triangle.
Where would you locate this super port?
Well, I think geographically there's a lot of debate, but I think naturally the Firth of Thames sits in that sort of right place for it. How you do that, they're the conversations that are starting to happen now, because it does require gazetting of land, it does require us building rail links to it, it does require a partnership with Kiwi Rail. So I think that conversation will be had over the next number of years. We'll then get in a position where we'll work out how to do it together with the Port of Tauranga, and off the back of that I think you'll see quite a change in how the supply chain works. I use a very simple line: I'll be dead before the port leaves Auckland. I'm not that old, so and I'm not planning to die young, so there you go.
Excellent. Well, that's long-term. Short-term, fast-track. It's obviously been celebrated by the government. What does this mean for the port?
It's a fantastic step, and we're very excited. Last week we got started on the projecting. So what the wharf will do is two things. From an operational perspective, it'll make us big ship capable for roll-on, roll-off, which is there, and for big cruise ships. Right now we have a very complicated way of putting big cruise ships onto Prince's Wharf. Gets in the ferry basin, you have ferry cancellations. So this allows us now to start our exit from the ferry basin. We will still use Princess on occasions, but our main wharf will become there. We'll build a new purpose-built cruise terminal, so there'll be an absolute amazing customer experience as we welcome people to Auckland and to New Zealand more fully. And the other thing that it does is it allows us to start the sail back of Captain Cook and Marsden and the opening up of the waterfront, as I said earlier. What most people do is they're focusing on Bledisloe North. We're also extending Ferguson North a little bit by 43 metres. That will allow us to handle the big 10,000 TEU ships that are starting to come into the market. On top of that, we'll finish the dredging, which we've got consented. So all in all, it's about a $200 million investment. But when it's finished, we'll be big ship capable for container ships, for cruise ships, for roll-on, roll-off, which are getting bigger. And we will have future-proofed the port for the next 40 years.
When will that be done?
My GM of infrastructure gets quite stressed when I say to him we need the Bledisloe Wharf for next cruise season, and we do. The cruise terminal will be open for next cruise terminal, and that starts in a year's time.
Fantastic.
So Ferguson North will then be done after that, and we start dredging within the next month. So, we're getting on with it. And the great thing about that is it's creating jobs. Bledisloe North construction will add 250 construction jobs, which I just for me right now, when everybody's saying how the economy is this and that, these are the positive signs of real change. And we're seeing very strong volume through the terminals right across the board. Some of the highest volume in 9 years went through the container terminal last month. Cars and other agricultural equipment, highest volume in about 3 years this month. So I do think that, the funk that people are in, the reality is underneath, it's really starting to kick. And I think the port's a great indicator of that.
It's this sort of turnaround and work that has won the port and Roger the backing of the Maritime Union, once foe, now friend.
You've got to have a board backing you. That was very clear back in the bad old days. The board was backing all the bad moves. This current board supporting Roger and his senior executive team and all of his managers in the road they're going down. But someone has to drive it, and obviously Roger's driving it, and we're very pleased. Pleased that it's come along and done that. I just, the old story, mate, why did it take an Aussie to do that?
Well, we have good news for you, Carl.
Well, the first thing, I'm now a New Zealander. So I came here back in 2007 and I became a New Zealand citizen.
So you're full-on citizen. So we can say to Carl, that's it.
Yeah. No longer. Except maybe when it comes to sport, I still focus on Australian rules football. But apart from that, I'm a Kiwi.
We will let that one slide. Instead, let's get back to the port's success. Just last week, the Port, the Union and the Mayor of Auckland sat down together and formally signed a tripartite accord, which basically sets out shared principles for working together on the port plan for the benefit of Auckland. That plan confirms council ownership, with the port contributing that $1 billion in profits to the council over the next decade. And there are agreed commitments for health and safety and for greater cooperation, collaboration and transparency. The group says it's a groundbreaking milestone.
What it allows now for us to do is to genuinely work together, the owner, the worker and also the port company, on the future of the waterfront.
That absolutely has to be the model going forward for a lot of the ports around the country.
Because that tripartite accord has just been signed, hot off the press. What is it? What does it involve? And how important was this for the union?
There was a lot of talk and hot air about getting a sugar hit of money from overseas, a global network operator coming in to take over and throw a whole lot of money at us. We decided that, that's not the way to do it. There's a better way. We can work together. So we sat down and we hatched a plan with the council. And with the management, that working together, we could do a lot better. And that's exactly what happened there in a nutshell. But there was a hell of a lot of pressure, and there always is, because ports, whether we like it or not, are a license to print money in some areas. And unfortunately, managers and councillors and people with the wrong mindset, in my opinion, want to get their hands on that money.
So does this accord... How does it change that? How does it make it fairer, I guess?
It keeps it in the hands of the community for a start. So it's not all the profits not running off overseas. It also makes the council and the employer and unions understand how we need to work with each other in greater detail. And I guess it's just a lot more education on how working together and working for the community is a lot more helpful than butting heads all the time. And having death and destruction, could be a possible outcome if you go down the other road.
Did you ever think, you rewind 3-4 years ago, things were tense? There was, sadly, so much death and destruction.
A court has found former Ports of Auckland boss Tony Gibson guilty in relation to the death of a stevedore.
It's the fourth death at the port since 2017. The facility's been under huge pressure in recent years to clear a shipping backlog.
A review released early last year found the ports had a culture of prioritising productivity over safety, and there were systemic health and safety problems.
Did Could you ever imagine you'd reach the point that you have this month where the three of you are sitting around the table signing an accord like this?
To answer your question there, a manager down at Ports of Auckland once told me that hope wasn't a strategy. But when you're getting hammered day in and day out, that's actually all you've got to hang on to is a bit of hope. So in the background, there was always that thought that if we hung in there, if we kept battling away as we do, someone would come along and something would change, and that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, at the face of it, at times it looked like we were hitting our head against a brick wall, but in the end, we prevailed, and we couldn't be happier where we're at now. And this has to be celebrated, and I'm not so sure it is around the rest of the country behind a few corporate veils, but it should be, and this should be the model going forward for a lot of workplaces, in my view.
What would stop people from doing it? If it's so good and everyone seems to be on the same page finally, what's stopping people from doing this in other places?
That old chestnut ideological thought process is, I guess, and capital versus labour. But what all these people, that are entrenched in the positions need to understand is that there's enough pie for everyone to share in. They don't need to be greedy. Let's share it around. Let's all make the environment safe. Let's all make a few bob, and let's all, as I say, get home safely at the end of the day.
And I just want to be clear, with the port making money again, which is fantastic, are the workers getting their fair share of this success?
Down there yesterday, the first time I'd visited there for a while, Ports of Auckland. Obviously, I worked there for 22 years before getting elected as National Secretary. And I was really pleased to see. I talked to quite a few of the guys I knew from my time there, and they were saying everything was going really well. They're very happy with the way things are going and the agreement they have. So I believe that they believe they're getting their fair share, because knowing our membership too, they're not. They will soon speak up.
They're not afraid of that. I like it. And safety-wise, that's the huge thing, Carl. After too many deaths, do the workers feel safe at work now?
They have to. They must do. I mean, the work that was done, firstly by Ports of Auckland to Ports of Auckland under Roger's leadership and Jan Dawson's, the chair's leadership, engaged in a Ports of Auckland code of practice that was put together, and then following on from that, we ended up getting a national one rolled out. And so, and those minimum standards, but we hadn't had them for a very long time that everyone have to live up to. But, that was just a standard, and I would say that Ports of Auckland and a few other organisations are going above that.
Describe the situation at the port, say, 5 years ago to how it is today.
That's a big question. I guess, like I said, I popped in yesterday and I was a lot more buoyant, happy. There's renovations going on, a bit of disruption, of course, but the guys all seem generally happy. And the numbers and the figures speak to that. 5 years ago, not so much. There was a lot of, I was down there on the job then, and there was a lot of complaints, mistrust, I guess, jockeying for position, it was a terrible situation. It was a hell of a time to be working down there, to be honest. Sometimes I look back and I wonder how we actually all survived. We must be not patting ourselves on the back there, but pretty hardy, really, to put up with all the conditions we were going through, truth be known. But we did. We got through it and come out the other end.
It's a remarkable turnaround, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Roger Gray and Carl Findlay. This episode was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by Steve Burridge. I'm Amanda Gillies. Mā te wā.